Hi, I'm James from Future Voices podcast. Today I'm meeting with Kalvin, who is my professional coach. Over the course of my career, I've learned how important it is to stay physically, emotionally and mentally well. I hope that the conversation between Kalvin and I demonstrates the parallels between the journeys that we all take and how important this is. Here's what he had to say. I first met Kalvin when I needed a different type of support to build my strength and confidence to return to work. In 2020, I was sick and ultimately I left local authority service after nearly 20 consecutive years. The link between emotional and physical health was painfully clear. So what does this have to do with adolescent safeguarding, with social work, with policing, with intervention? Well, the journey so far has shown me that understanding better what underpins my behaviour and the influences on the decisions that I make is significant. E.g., if I'm tired, I've had a stressful day, I deserve a treat, don't I? They can all lead to less healthy decisions that ultimately maintain that cycle that I'm unhappy with, which then led to the same behaviours and a repeated pattern. Okay, so what? Well, next was setting goals, but realistic goals. You will still have pizza. You'll still have a few pints. So how do we factor that in while making realistic progress? Wow, less frightening. Clear goals, achievable, step by step, encouragement and support. It's okay if things don't go exactly to plan, as long as the overall trajectory is positive. We're moving in the right direction. Okay, so there's some parallels with the work that we do. But moreover, the focus on emotional growth through attainment makes me better at my job. It keeps me fitter, it keeps me healthier, and it makes me more effective. Kalvin's been a key voice in that, directly impacting my ability to keep focus on my work effectively. And I wanted to make sure that I included all of those voices that influence practice. And for me, Kalvin's one of those. So, Kalvin, how does that sound?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what you've mentioned in what you just read out is there is some connection there between both professions. And if we just look at your journey alone and what you've sort of overcome and the barriers you've broken through since starting, we've had countless. Obviously, when you started with me, you were 15 kilos heavier than you are now. Which when you pick up a 15 kilo weight, that really does signify the amount of weight you've lost and dropped. But personally for myself, I've always tried to explain and get the idea of the number on the scales isn't entirely the whole thing that we're working on. It's more of the whole picture. So the attitude, the emotions, the feelings of what you get when you have a good week of nutrition, sleep, hydration and eating. And for every person that has to go through these barriers, I think there's some parallel between exercise, but in everyone's life, we all have these barriers and things that we need to break through. So I think a lot we can learn from your journey is having to adhere and create a sustainable routine which helps you inevitably be the best version of yourself. But we also need to understand that there's going to be some barriers, some temptation, some restrictions, some probably people influence from others that we need to sort of keep a strong-minded approach to.
What's it been like for you when I am struggling or I'm disappointed in perhaps some of the decisions I've taken that have then influenced my progress?
So, I mean, it's very easy. A personal trainer or a coach is someone that's going to hold you accountable. So it's one of the main reasons people come to see us, because they know that if they're going to come in and we've said we need to lose a certain amount of weight by this week, and when you come in, you do that weigh and you do that measure, everyone does sort of think, oh God, I'm going to get a bit of a bollocking. So we try and eradicate that, because you shouldn't have that anxiety when you come in this room. You should feel that if you haven't perhaps had the best week because you've been stressed, you're tired, you've worked a lot, your kids have kept you up, then there's other positives that we can focus on other than just a number on a scale. And particularly when you've had social events in the past, or you've had a really hectic week where you've travelled a lot, and going to the gym and getting your steps in is simply impossible, but you've still turned up to your sessions to train here, keeping some form of strict routine despite the madness that's going on. I think personally I like to bring those to the surface, because I think it's very easy to become focused on the main element of why you came was because you wanted to lose that weight. So for you, if that number doesn't drop or doesn't change, it's a write-off. And that's not just the same for you, that's the same for everybody. And if we can try and regain and recapture you and say, well, listen, the number hasn't quite dropped to what we wanted, for example, or you haven't managed to turn up and do your steps every day, then maybe we can turn it and flip it and use other things that you have done to get that gratification you're after.
It made me think, in the answer that you're saying, then there's something about you can set the ultimate goal, and sometimes that can feel quite far away. And then, but what we're focusing on is the step by step, on that day by day, that week by week. So as long as the direction of travel overall is positive, we can weather some of the things that may not always go to plan. Yeah. And for me, there are so many parallels in how we work with young people, how we work with families. And I saw my journey there were parallels around having to think through the steps that were going to be positive, and even when things may be a step backwards, the focus is still overall on the way forward. Which I think has, certainly in conversations with yourself, has been something that has maintained the ultimate belief that we will reach the end goal.
Yeah. And I think whether you're into the gym or into exercise and fitness, I think as humans, we are a creature of habits. And if we can keep some form of habit and routine consistently flowing, even though we all understand that they are going to be slip-ups and things and barriers are going to become in the way, but we're trying our best. And that's ultimately, as humans, all we can do. And if we know that we are trying and we are turning up and we're giving things the best sort of output that we can, then I think overall we can be happy as people.
That's one of the things that, for me growing up, exercise and the gym was very much a boy thing and a masculine thing, and I didn't fit in that space. And it's always been something that has been fearful for me, and it's been something that I've kind of dipped my toe in, but then I've kind of moved away. And I think now about the environment that you've created that isn't like that, that then has afforded me to grow in confidence to be able to step into a space and go in there knowing what my focus is, what I'm there to achieve, and that's my focus, rather than how I may be perceived or that I may fail in that space. Is that why you set up OP3, to achieve outcomes like that?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started out in David Lloyd, which is sort of 7 years ago now where I started, I got to meet people firsthand, and I was only a kid myself, sort of walking around the gym floor trying to tell people in their 40s and 50s what to do, and how they can sort of better themselves physically, mentally, emotionally. And I think when people first look at a child trying to give someone life advice and exercise advice, you tend to, as a young person, get ignored for that, because they're sort of looking at you thinking, well, you've got none of this life experience. You don't know sort of what you're talking about. But I made sure when I started at David Lloyd, I would always be on the gym floor. Now, gym environments themselves, they're very intimidating spaces. People aren't used to them. And, for those that have been brought up into them, it comes naturally to them. It's easy. They can walk in, they can start training, and it's fine. But for the rest of the others, it's quite an intimidating place. And that's why you find a lot of people come in and they'll run for as long as they can, or they go on the cross trainer and that's all they do. And there's so much more we can be doing. But when I started on the gym floor, I said to myself, despite how tired I am, or if I don't think there's much on that floor for me to go and get in terms of engagement with clients, I would not go and sit down in the gym office until I've spoken to 20 people every shift. And in my profession, I think it's all about engagement. If you can have a conversation with people, you can mirror an individual. We get loud people, we get quiet people, we get reserved people, very shy people, but you've got to be adaptable to mirror those personalities. And OP3, for me, I created this brand and this gym, and I created OP3 to basically welcome all. And you will see in both the studios I currently own that our front doors are always open. And I have a thing about that, and I tell all my trainers to keep the doors open, because nobody's going to come through a front door that's closed and frosted in an environment they're completely unaware of. So I say to my trainers, the door will always be open, therefore people can always walk past and pop their heads in, and those people can then dip their toe in. Maybe next time they walk past, they might walk in. Maybe the time after, they might come in and say, have a conversation. If we shut these places off where most of them are frosted, there's sort of key codes and passes to get through, we're already sort of putting, in my opinion, a barrier for these people to be able to gain access and feel comfortable. So you will see at OP3 a variety of all people. We have young people from the age of 14 up to 94 training here, in all different professions. And I'm quite proud of that, because we don't cater for one person. And we have 3 trainers in each studio, and you will have 3 very different individuals training with each coach every time. And I sometimes look around and I'm very proud of that, because I can see when a person first walks into this room, and you can tell, they're hunched over, they're looking down at the floor, they don't feel confident. And then 6 weeks to 8 weeks maximum, we will have a laugh, we will educate, we will teach them, we will encourage them. They will get amazing results, and all of a sudden they're walking around with their chest up, they're engaging with people they've never even met before, and their whole personality and confidence changes. And for me, that is why I did it.
And one of my best friends has come in and gone through that exact process.
Yeah.
That's lovely. I'm thinking what you're describing, that first part of what you were saying around the relational aspect. So you being able to mirror and match and build the relationships with the people that you work with, is that integral to the process?
Yeah, for sure. And it is who we are. You will see, for me, it is essential that everyone that works with me at OP3 is able to adapt and change and be able to mirror these people that come through these doors, because at the end of the day, they all have their own story of why they're coming. And when someone first walks in, you'll get probably 10% of the actual reason of why that person's here. And as you go through that journey with that person, they'll start slowly releasing a little bit more every single time you train them. They'll release a bit more about them and a bit more. And if we don't have that relationship where they feel comfortable to do it, then they won't stick around for very long and they won't open up. And as much as it's about exercise and emotion here, in terms of we want to make you feel great, we want to get those endorphins going, we want to make you feel comfortable, but we have people come in their most vulnerable times when they lose their partners. They've had a really tough day at work. They've had difficult stuff happen in their personal lives that they bring in here. And I love the fact that when I can see someone walk in who's quite tense and upset and agitated for whatever reason that may be that's happened outside of this room, that when they leave, they are always smiling and laughing. And that is, for me, one of the main reasons we're here. So I think if we have the power to change someone's attitude and, if their mood, I guess, on that day, if they've encountered something quite difficult, then that's quite a powerful thing. And I've seen it time and time again in here. I think yourself, you've been in where you've been stressed with a work situation that's happened, and you come in, and as you're training, you're talking to me, and for me, I'm really just a soundboard. I wouldn't be able to give you advice on your field of expertise, but I can listen, I can be an ear. And we have that a lot where we're a bit of an emotional punch bag where people will open up and tell us stuff. And that's okay with us because we may not have all the answers, but as you're training and you're releasing this sort of stuff, we can see that you're starting to relax. And you're often coming with problems where you mention, you go, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. And I haven't even said anything, but I've just listened. And 3 sets later, you're like, actually, I could do that. And then you leave here and you're like, oh, cheers, yeah.
It's part of why I wanted to interview you, because I'm making a podcast around social care and safeguarding, and it may seem strange that I want to interview yourself. And actually what you've just described is exactly why I wanted to interview you, because what I've learned over time, wherever I go, people will talk about the importance of supervision. They will talk about the importance of reflective practice. And what I've learned is that actually the space in which you have to be able to think and process and work things through doesn't necessarily have to fit within a certain description. It could be that it's in a different relationship. It could be that it's in a different context, in a different place. And it made me think about, what does that mean for us as professionals that are working with often the most vulnerable people, where we also are bringing our shit sometimes into the table, or is live in our consciousness. What does that tell us about what we need to do in order to maintain our emotional well-being and the link that inextricably has with our physical well-being?
Yeah, I mean, they're both very closely linked. You know, the reality is if you feel like you look better, you mentally you feel better. You know, like, and when you come in, you train, it releases all those endorphins. You feel like you've worked hard mentally in your head. You feel clearer, you feel better. And when people come and train here and they exercise, as I've said previously, their emotion of that, what they have pre coming into the studio to when they leave is completely different. And the training is a huge part, don't get me wrong, you know, for aesthetics and how you look, but equally it is even more so important to how it mentally makes you feel. And I know for me personally, I train every day. I exercise, 7 days a week really, which is probably too much, and I know that. But the reason I do it,
I do too, 10,000 steps a day.
The reason I do it is because of how it makes me feel mentally. So I say I exercise 7 days a week, but it may be that on the 7th day I just do an hour and a half walk. And exercise is exercise. So walking is exercise, right? And people often look at people doing high rocks and marathons and triathlons, and they think, I'm never going to do that. And it's like, you don't have to. And before they've even tried, they will put up a barrier as to why they can't be where they want to be or try what they want to try because they're not this person who's done a high rocks or a marathon. And for me, it's ridiculous because that's not you, that's that other person. So we have so much stuff on social media now, which is, you know, social media is fantastic and it's great and it's useful, but it also can be the enemy at the same time because we often sit there and we scroll and we see all these people doing all these other things and we think, well, I can't do that, or I'm never going to be that, so I'm not going to bother. And if we had the approach whereas I'm my own person and I'm going to try do X, Y, Z on a 7-day period as opposed to what they're doing, if we had our own approach to it, then I think that we wouldn't be chasing other people's goals. And if we manage to sort of sustain that approach and do that, then that physical element of doing will reward you mentally as well. So the two are very closely linked. And if we do manage to sort of change that where your physical motion throughout the week is increased and it's something that is controlled and measured, then I can guarantee, for example, for me, when a client comes through the door, if they're really not feeling it or they're really like they're tired, they're lethargic, they're like, I am knackered today, I cannot be bothered for this today, Kalvin, I always say to myself and to my clients, do the warm-up. Do the warm-up give it 10 minutes. If you do not feel like training after 10 minutes, we will stretch you off and you can go home. And in the 7 years I've been training people and coaching, no one has ever left. My point is that the way and the power exercise has for your mental well-being, it is limitless. Like, I do it 7 days a week because of how it makes me feel. And that's obsessive and that is a lot, but you can start with 1 and then increase it to 2, and then 2 becomes 3. And all of a sudden you've got a routine. You're keeping yourself physically and mentally healthy. You feel good about yourself. Your mental well-being is positive. You get up and you, instead of resenting these things, you look forward to them. And all of a sudden those barriers that were there before, they start to crumble.
That's a journey to go from from the resentment of getting up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym, or 5:30, to actually bouncing out of bed and being right. Let's do this. Yeah. And let's, and when you're on that journey, is that is a journey in itself. Yeah, and I mean, the amount of people that I've met are like, I hate exercise. I hate it. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, you won't? And they're like, I will. I'm never going to enjoy this, right? And it's my job as a coach to sit down and learn about what people like and what they don't like. And what they don't like, the reality is sometimes you may have to do it. But I'm not going to make you do an hour of something you don't enjoy. Lat raises. Exactly that. Or Bulgarians, people hate them. We've got to do them, but the whole session isn't going to be based around it. And the journey of people that, when they start exercise, who genuinely do hate it, and I've met a lot of them, and some people I do still train now who do hate it, no matter what we do. And that is fine. You haven't got to love it. But the importance of just doing it and getting it done and sort of gritting your teeth is a powerful thing from when you first walk in and you think, there's no way I'm going to do it. So our 10-week transformation, it is one of our most popular packages we offer. And I think there's a difference of mindset for people that go, this is going to be a fantastic 10-week period where I can focus on my physical and mental well-being for 10 weeks. And by the end of it, I should be in a much better position than I'm in now. But for some people, they look at the 10 weeks and they think, shit, that's going to be intense for me. And we've got to be able to change that approach and make it sustainable and achievable for each person. There's some parallel in what you're saying there around, signing up to the gym indefinitely feels like a mountain, but signing up for something and saying, well, I can do this for 10 weeks or I can do this for a fixed period of time feels much more achievable. Yeah. And again, that's the parallels for me around, we need to break stuff down sometimes into more manageable, smaller, what's the word I'm looking for? We need to break it down into more manageable, achievable goals. Yeah. With the focus being that actually the ultimate aim is this. Yeah. But actually for the next 10 weeks, week 1, week 2, week 3, this is what we're going to achieve. And one of the things that stands out to me is sometimes we may start something, not necessarily anything, a piece of work, we may, particularly in my line of work, and I'm not sure that everyone always knows where they're hoping that they're going to end up. No. And I think one of the things that certainly sticks out to me in this conversation and generally is that real focus on this is where we will get to. Yeah. We will get there. The way in which we get there may kind of meander, but ultimately this is where we're going to be. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly about, if you stick that big goal at the end and say this is what we're going to be working towards, that can be a daunting process. But, if we can make short, achievable, sustainable goals along that journey, then it's a lot easier. If we're ticking things off along the way, it's going to keep you motivated to keep going. We have people come in and say, I want to lose 20 kilos. And my first thing is, well, let's focus on the first 5. Let's get the first 5 off, celebrate that, then we'll go for the next 5. If I take that approach of let's get 20 kilos off, and then the following week I'm like, we've lost 900 grams. Doesn't sound a lot, does it? We haven't chipped away. But if I say we're going to get the first 5 kilos off, and we lose a kilo, we've only got 4 to go. Mm-hmm. It's about making those little mental blocks in your head that you want to work towards that, as you say, are going to lead to the bigger picture. But the bigger picture is a long way away, and we have to understand and appreciate that. But if we can create some small achievable goals along that road that we can tick off and celebrate and enjoy, then we sort of self-reward.
And that helps us to stay sustainable and keep going on those.
And that self-reward isn't that you do really well at the week, so then you go and have 10 pints and a pizza.
No.
No.
Yeah, I mean, no. That's something we've been trying to stop.
So if people are listening, if you're my colleagues, would be very busy social workers, police officers working shifts, teachers marking reports and lesson planning into the night, nurses, doctors, other helping professions, they might say, I just don't have the time. What would you say to that?
It's difficult because, we're all busy. Everyone is busy. We've all got business commitments. We've all got personal commitments. We all have our own goals that we like to be working on. We're all not quite where we want to be in terms of those aspects, and that's fine. But we have people saying, coming in here, and I'm like, you've got to do your steps, and they're like, I don't have the time. I can't hit that number you're asking me to hit. And some people don't have that time, and that's fine. You don't need to sit there and wallow in. Some days you will not have the time to do the things you'd like to do, and it's annoying, it's frustrating, and you can sort of well in that sort of self-pity of I haven't managed to do what I wanted to do today. But I would say that in order for those people wanting, who don't have the time, firstly, I think you've got to want it enough to make those sacrifices and change. And I think you have to be selfish for yourself. Because if you're someone who's providing a service to other people and advice and trying to help others, if you're secretly going home and neglecting your own health and nutrition and ambitions and time, it will catch up with you.
And you mentioned nutrition there.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation, we've had multiple conversations about nutrition, but I think sometimes we don't always talk about that and the impact that can have on physical and emotional well-being.
Yeah, it's a huge part, like I get it. When I finish some days I do 9-10 hours of coaching, I get home and if I don't have anything that I can prepare instantly, my mind goes, well, what can I get on Deliveroo or Uber Eats over here, Livo? But
it's the only thing you can have that's not the worst thing.
It is, yeah, and that's normally the one I opt for. But it's convenience, right? We crave a reward after hard work. So when we've done something and we've worked hard and we've put effort and time and it gets to the end of the week or the end of the day and you think, I'd love to have a pint or I'd love to have an Indian, or that is okay to have that feeling. But what we need to try and do is bottle it up and restrict it to the time that's right. And it's very easy for me to say, go home and have some chicken rice and broccoli after you've done a massive meeting or a really big day at work and it's been stressful. And it's very easy for me to say that, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I haven't gone to the pub after a long day or something really shit's happened and I haven't gone and had something to eat that made me feel better, And I'm someone who's massively into my health and fitness,
But you might say, if you're going to go walk to the furthest pub away so you can get some steps in.
Yeah, but I guess it depends on how many pints you stay for, doesn't it? If you get a taxi back home, then it's all sort of redundant, isn't it?
No, get the steps in.
Yeah, and for those people that say they don't have the time, I would say it's okay not to sometimes have that time, but if we're having an reoccurring appearance where you're saying, I do not have the time to prioritise my own health, I would sit down and say to you, you're wrong. And the reason for that is I believe that with a little bit of self-management and being selfish, as humans, especially now, we give ourselves away all the time. Oh, can you stay an extra 30 minutes to work? Yes. Can you come meet me for a drink after work? Yes. Can you come and do this for me? Yes. And we're always being pulled from pillar to lamppost. And for me, one of the biggest things that I've learned this year that I'm really focusing on for myself is to say no. And I think that instead of, when you finish that long day at work and all your colleagues are going, come to the pub with us or come to have dinner, it's okay to do that, but we need to learn that sometimes it is also okay to say no. And most of the time, people aren't wanting to go along and do these things, but they feel obliged that they have to because that's what everyone else is doing. And I think if we can start learning the power as individuals to sometimes say no and know that that's actually okay, and put a little bit aside for yourself, that you know that going out after work and drinking 4 or 5 pints isn't going to help you for tomorrow. You know that if you're trying to lose weight after a long day, pigging out on a massive takeaway or isn't going to help. And if we can have that approach and try and build that mindset where we feel comfortable in our surroundings to say no, I think that as a person you become more respected, and in the long term your own body and your mind will thank you for making those decisions.
There's something that you mentioned at the beginning around the need to make time for your health. And I certainly learned that the hard way. I worked and I worked and I worked and I worked. I gave and I gave, and ultimately burnt out, or very nearly burnt out. And that's a whole different story. That's a different journey, but partly how and why I'm sat here now and have the relationship with you. And so I think actually when we're talking about finding that time and making that time, even if it is 5 minutes, even if it is 10 minutes, even if it is going up and down the stairs several times, maybe, I don't know, but there has to be something that is going to be of benefit that may not be something that is the 10 weeks, or may not be something that is quite as directive.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it was I can't remember, I think it was Ariana Grande. She said everyone has the same 24 hours, and she got absolutely, it went berserk online. Because I can understand, right, like a single mother who's working a 10-hour shift or a 12-hour shift, like a nursing shift, for example, and then she's got to go home and feed her kids. Her 24 hours aren't the same as yours. They're not the same as mine. So I can understand why when people do get rubbed up the wrong way or get frustrated when they say, just make the time, because it's all due to personal circumstances, right? Like my 24 hours are different to yours. Yours are different to the next person's. And we all have different commitments. So it's to say to someone who's working a 12-hour shift who goes directly home and feeds their children to say, get off your ass and go and do 10,000 steps, it's not a realistic goal for them. But what we can do is go, right, we know we've got 3 long shifts coming up, back to back. What we're going to do is we're just going to eat as clean as possible, try and move as much as possible within those 12 hours. We've got 3 days left to recover the rest of the week. Let's plan, let's get things in the diary, let's set some goals for those days that you are able to do things. And I think that I get the making time and it is important and it's crucial, we have to. But if we label everyone having the same amount of time in the days, I don't agree with it. And I think that individuals do try their best. They do. People are trying, but if we're in that routine of eating unhealthy food, not moving a lot, and consuming alcohol a lot regularly, then to strip someone from that to say, right, we need you to do X, Y, Z, and completely change that for them, it's a big jump.
Sometimes I'm hearing you speak, and sometimes I wonder if we do ask children and families to move at a pace that maybe is not achievable in the time frame that we've set. So there's something about planning what can be done in an achievable way that's ultimately going to get us to that end result. That focus that you're talking about certainly has rubbed off in other areas of my life, and thinking around how I plan what I'm doing across a week, for example, not just in terms of exercise, but in terms of my work and in terms of my home life. I'm interested in, if you didn't have that drive, didn't have that focus, hadn't gone on the floor when you were young, what would life have looked like?
I should imagine it would be very different to where I am today. I think the world's changed in the sense that people used to go out and drink all the time, in the sense of, they'd be out on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, clubs, pubs, that sort of thing, pool nights with friends, darts nights, especially like speaking to my father, he said, the pub used to start on a Tuesday, finish on a Sunday.
Wow.
I think the culture, which is a good thing, I think, has changed to weekend drinking. But the weekend drinking actually probably equates to as much as what, for example, my father would drink over that 5-day period. So, often I'm out and, I will have a few beers and stuff, and people my age will go and cane it, and they'll be out to sort of 5, 6 in the morning, getting absolutely battered. And that is fine, like, I'm not judging. I think that is, if that's what you want to do with your weekends, that is fine. But I think as a youngster growing up, if I didn't have health and fitness to keep me training regularly, keep me motivated, give me something to work towards, then it'd be very easy to just DOS and not do much and fall into the trap that it's okay because I'm young. It's okay for me to sit around and not quite work out what I want to do, which is fine, and that is okay. And I'm extremely lucky that I was able to find my passion very young, because I guess the answer to your question is that I'm not sure where I'd be, but I can imagine it wouldn't be in a very good place, in the sense of, for my personal mindset, exercise really helps me. It's the one thing that I, on a weekly basis, I know I have to do every week to keep my brain occupied, positive endorphins. It's a huge thing for me, and it's something I prioritise at the top of my list on everything I do. My partner she gets frustrated with me all the time, because I've just got to go train for 45 minutes. I've just got to do for half an hour. I'll be in the bedroom doing sit-ups and press-ups, and for her, it's mental. But for me, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I've done something, I can relax. I'm not one of these people that can I can't sit down for longer than an hour without me having to get up and do something. So, I had other jobs. I worked in insurance, where it was sitting down. I did desk jobs and office jobs and corporate jobs, and I was okay at them. But I always knew that it wasn't something that was going to last long for me. It was a stepping stone. But every job I've ever had, I'm very thankful for, because it's taught me so many life skills that I have managed to adapt and develop and blossom into my character today. So I'm very thankful for my other jobs and all my other experiences that I've had, because it's helped me develop into the man I am. And without those, I wouldn't be the person I am.
Making me think around many things there. And I was thinking around the importance of fitness, exercise, and it made me think actually around when I set up an adolescent social work team back in 2015. And as a team, it was 9 of us all together, we're recognising that the work that we were doing was extremely impactful on us individually and as a collective. And what were we going to do in order to keep ourselves fit, healthy? And we were quite creative. We had someone come into our group supervisions, our weekly group supervisions, and they taught us something called key breathing, but it's almost like like a breathing exercise. But then that also moved then into like physical exercise. It did many things. It really brought the team together, but I believe that it really supported people in being able to manage some of the impact of the work that we had as well for those periods. What do you think about ideas like that, that might seem a bit left field, around how those working with people, what they may need from their organisations?
Well, I mean, in your field in particular, some of the stuff I can only imagine some of the things that you guys have to keep up with and experience. And I should imagine for you guys, you have to process a lot and you experience a lot, and you have to deal with some of the toughest things that are put onto your shoulders, and whether you like it or not, you probably sometimes take that home with you. So having those things where you get somebody come in and teach you breathing exercises, cold water therapy, new different things that help you calm and relax and unwind and stimulate you. I think these are powerful things. We've reached out to corporations in the past and tried to offer incentives for their workers that they can come and train here and work with us. We try and work with those businesses because I personally strongly believe that we can help those people who work in difficult circumstances. But I also think it shows that these corporate companies that are doing these for the people that work for them, they care. And that is ultimately what we need as individuals. You guys and whoever's working in difficult situations and scenarios, if you guys aren't being protected and looked after by the people above you, how can you be expected to look after others?
It made me think around where my journey's led. And I guess where I've landed is that conversational supervision alone is not enough for me. And probably hasn't been enough for many of those people that I've line managed and that I've worked with. And I'm interested to think around when we're talking about the influences and the voices that we need to create within systems to keep people psychologically and physically safe. What do they need to look like? So I think that's where my thought processes are leading in terms of maintaining fitness and health and well-being. We talked at the beginning about the relationship that we've built over time. And so I know what I've got out of the relationship. What have you got out of the relationship with me? What have you got from training me?
Patience.
Yeah.
No. I think, there's been occasions where, I'm recently opened both my businesses. So there's been times where you've come in and I've shared experiences and struggles and stresses with you and I had you as a bit of a soundboard. So for me, when I meet individuals for the first time, as I've said, they're quite closed off and they only give you information they're comfortable with passing on to you. But you and I have built a relationship based on trust, and whatever you speak to me about is something that I take back and I process, and it's the same I would like to think with you. But I've learned that it's sometimes okay to also give a bit back about yourself. It's, as a person, as a professional, my job here is to coach you and to help you achieve your goals. But I sometimes, as a person, will keep things in and not overshare to the point where people sometimes think Kalvin's always happy, because everyone always says to me, you're always smiling, you're always so positive, you're always happy. And I think from you, one of the biggest things that I've learned on a personal level is that sometimes it's okay to show that I am a little bit vulnerable sometimes, and I can be stressed and I can be agitated, and that is okay. And that's nothing that you've done through me training you, but that's something you've done personally from our relationship and our time together that has, made me recognise and learn. It's a powerful journey when you meet people for the first time in here, and it is when people are at their most vulnerable, and it's a very rewarding process when you sort of get people where they want to be and help them along their journey. And their ultimate goal is to get to where they want to be, but the journey is the most powerful thing. And we celebrate absolutely every single chapter we can, because what you're doing now is, in terms of physically and mentally and professionally, 2 years ago, you probably wouldn't have even thought that you would be anywhere near this now.
No.
So as people and individuals, we we are so busy working towards where we want to be and doing the extra hours and putting the graft in that we very rarely lift our head up and celebrate what we have achieved so far. And that is something I think that you and I have both learned recently, that we've grown so quickly that it's easy to go, right, now it's the next thing, and people look on at us sometimes and they think, God, they don't fucking stop.
Just go, slow down.
Yeah, just, you know,
just wait
and enjoy what you've got. And for me this year, that's something that I've said I've promised myself that I'll do, because I spend my time with my head down looking, right, the next thing. And I mean, what I have here is very special. And we've got, you know, over 140 members in both of our studios combined. And we have so many amazing people achieving amazing things. And if I'm constantly with my head down looking at the next thing, I don't want to ever miss or ignore any part of the journey I'm on, because I'm aware that it can be taken away at any point.
It's so interesting to go from a position of what's the future going to look like to what's the future going to look like. You know, that's such a significant switch. And whereas what you were just reflecting on our relationship around, it made me think very visually about my fear of physical strength when the bar's above me, and not wanting to put myself in a position where I may be vulnerable, visibly and physically, but being so okay with being emotionally open and vulnerable. And so it's interesting that I observe the opposite, or had done, where physically you're like, yeah, I've got everything. And then, you know, and I know I'd be a bit, what's going on here? You don't seem quite right. That to have that response, it makes me think, certainly in my line of work. I read something many years ago. The book was called Adolescent Attachment, or Teenagers Attachment, I think it was. And there's a chapter in there that talks very much about how attachment works for adolescents. And what it says is that in order for me as a professional to have an impact on the child that I'm working with, they need to see that they've had an impact on me. And that could be that I'm moved by what they've achieved, by their talents, by their resilience, by a whole multitude of things that they've done. But they essentially need to be experienced and felt by the world in a way that validates their capabilities and validates who they are. And I think that possibly extends into a lot of relationships, where when those boundaries are open, where you are willing to be in a relationship where you can grow and be impacted by the other person, then it's very much reciprocal about how each other then are able to develop and evolve. So it's lovely having that conversation.
And I mean, literally just talking to you now about it, it's made me think, and I actually think we've sort of swapped unintentionally from you coming to me to provide a service. We've swapped that, as you've quite rightly said. You've provided me with sometimes emotional support in terms of advice and some things that I've maybe dealt with in the past, and I've helped you with the physical aspects of that. And I think along the way, sort of, that's quite a great thing when you think about it. And I was just thinking about that question you went to me earlier about what would I do if I hadn't led down this path. And I guess the answer to that, because I didn't really answer it properly, I guess I wouldn't know where I would be now. But what I can say is that I refuse to be one of those people that live for the weekend. So if I hadn't had health and fitness and training and stuff to focus on, it would be very easy to fall on the trap of, well, Friday's here, let's go to the pub. Friday's here, let's go to the pub. What are you doing Saturday? Let's go for a couple of beers. Oh, Sunday, let's go for a roast and a couple of beers. Roll through Monday, feeling awful. And for me, I've luckily enough been able to have 6 a.m. starts from Monday to Friday for the last 7 years.
I'm sure I'd say that's lucky.
Well, for me,
no,
I love it
joking.
because I know week in, week out where I'm at. So I cannot even be tempted to go to the pub on a Sunday or have a big one on a Friday. And whilst I see a lot of my friends do that because they don't have the get up to do anything the following day, so that they don't, so that's fine for them. But with me, I always have made sure that I've got something to get up for that next day, which I think has personally helped keep me focused and aligned on where I need to be. Because if I didn't have that reason to get up and get to work, then other distractions, I'm sure, would be exposed to me.
Oh, yeah, I think absolutely agree with you. I'm just thinking around within my profession and within our work, it's compared to the whole world, it's quite a small arena. It's quite a small space that we look into. And I'm so grateful that you've taken time out to have this conversation today, because I think when I watch this back and when people hear this, I think it will help them see the parallels across multiple different areas of life, in how we can all work together. And I'm certainly conscious within my work, particularly as I've moved out and I've worked with policing and I've worked with local safeguarding partnerships, around how do we work with the other people in the world, you know, the businesses, the shops, the other communities. How do we work effectively? And they hold so much knowledge and expertise that we're yet to tap into. And so having this conversation with you, having built the relationship that I have with you, and thinking about the impact that that can have ultimately on how we work with children and families, I think is quite special. So I'm really grateful.
No, likewise.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.